And we're live. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Matthew Bellman, Ryan Kostrowski. We are back. We are ready to talk about a little Major League Baseball. I know we were discussing this one for a while beforehand that it's so weird having it start like this in the middle of July or almost the end of July. And you kind of just feel out of it. You feel like we were all studied up for baseball 4 months ago, and now it's like it's brand new again.
Yeah, it is like brand new. A whole new season, a whole new environment. Like everything's new. One thing me and you haven't even talked about is the fact that the National League now has the DH, which, it changes, how we look at everything. It just does.
And I know we say this a lot at the beginning. Some people love the beginning of DFS seasons, and other people like it's more random. I just feel like it's the most random week of baseball of all time. Like a lot of these guys are going to look terrible up there. You're going to have pitchers missing locations, which I think if you're like a GPP contrarian player, I mean, I could be wrong about this. Just like my gut instinct is, though, that first week or two, like I love the idea of playing a little different.
Well, I always love that idea. The point being, though, it's hard to nail who's gonna be that team, though, or those teams, because when you're playing GPPs and you're getting different, like in the middle of the season, at least you've got some reasons. Maybe the team played well their last game, and now it's strictly because it's a crapshoot everywhere. So, when you talk about being different, no team, in my opinion, should have like crazy high ownership just because we don't know enough right now.
Absolutely, guys. So anyways, before we get into the actual DraftKings slate, so we got the 2-gamer on Thursday. Most of you guys who have been longer time customers know we'll usually shoot out a video for a 2-gamer, but we don't do official write-ups for 2-game slates. That works also like on Wednesdays and Thursdays throughout the season when you got like a Thursday 2-game slate. Before we do that, though, guys, Overlay is back as well. They've had their NBA contests up for a while. I mean, we're still 10 days away from that kicking off. We got baseball starting in a couple of days. Either later today or over the next couple of days, we will shoot out an Overlay video as well. I know some of you guys have been playing the golf stuff. We got a longtime customer now named Ryan Monks that I want to shout out for 2 reasons. One, he's had some good success playing on Overlay over here. 2, the world needs more people like you, Ryan. Not me, Ryan. You, Ryan Monks. He sent us like, I don't know, $50, $100, like several different times throughout quarantine. He's like, hey, man, I feel bad for you guys having sports taken away. Go have dinner on me and stuff like that. Like, that means a lot when people do things like that, when you get guys who just send you money randomly just because they can afford it at the time. So I just much appreciated. Wanted to shout you out on video because that just made me feel good every time you did that.
Definitely, we talk about that a lot, even beyond the money. It just shows how we're appreciated, and we definitely appreciate that. We definitely appreciate you. Definitely more Ryans like him, not more Ryans like you, for sure.
Hey, I am on board with that one. The world needs less of me and more of him, no doubt about it. It goes back to, like I said, though, it's nice. It's a weird time in the world. Everybody knows it. It's been talked about nonstop for a few months. And even just that little pick-me-up. I was out there hanging out with some family members out of town this weekend real briefly. And just like see that show up in your email, I'm like, this is just a good dude. I told my uncle all about him too. I was like, this is just a good all-around guy, I guess is one way to put it.
Amen.
All right, so let's mosey on over. This is not going to be like our normal PowerPoint type of videos. We'll have that for Friday. For this one here, we want to discuss it earlier in the week. We'll probably talk about it again on Thursday.
I'm not going to lie, though. A couple of things. Like, this is how we used to make videos. So it's definitely giving me a little nostalgia, that throwback feeling, because this is how we used to make videos. We started doing the PowerPoints, I don't know, a year ago, maybe even before that. But this is how we originally started doing them. So definitely getting like choked up over here because I love it. And man, this slate is just juicy for a 2-gamer.
All right, so I'm going to ask you as a baseball historian, Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Johnny Cueto. Off the top of your mind, how many Cy Youngs are right here?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I don't know the answer. I'd have to look it up because I don't remember the exact number for all these guys either.
I'm going to say 6.
So there's got to be at least 6. Did Cueto win one a while back?
I think he might have won one. I was going to say 6 or 7.
I feel like Cueto got one. Did Cole win the AL last year?
Yes, I'm pretty sure he did.
Man, I feel like we are so far removed for sports. All these answers that would have been so easy months ago, I feel like I'm like really trying to really think about. So if we're just saying 2 between those guys, Kershaw's got 4, if I remember correctly.
Does he? Okay, I didn't realize that. So maybe like 8 or 9 then.
Yeah, because Scherzer's got at least 3, doesn't he?
Sounds right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're looking at least 9. It's just kind of fun. You get all these really good pitchers, or at least 3 really good pitchers,
Well,
and a guy who used to be pretty good in Johnny Cueto.
I'm a huge Cueto fan also. Like, he's just a guy I love. He's definitely not on the level of these other guys. Certainly not now. Even at his heyday, he wasn't considered a guy like this. But people now that like just got into baseball don't know how good he was when he was, at the top of his game. He wasn't quite as good as like Scherzer and Cole are now, but he was a number one.
No doubt about it. I guess my first thoughts on pitching right here is I think the opportunity cost of playing Cueto and like hoping to get lucky with him, at LA against a potent offense like this, when the other 3 guys are as good as they are, I don't think I can go that contrarian. You are one of the ultimate contrarian MLB DFS players out there, at least guys who enter big money tournaments and things like that. Can you consider Cueto, or is he completely off the board for you?
I mean, anyone on a 2-game slate is in play, in these big tournaments, no doubt about that. I guess my question, and I'm not even saying you'll know the answer to this, but something that I need to look into, we need to look into. I wonder how deep these guys are going to go, because the less they go, the more interest I have in Cueto, because then you're talking about like potential bullpen games. And on these 2-game slates, like, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to see Cueto and a Dodger stack take down a GPP. You know what I mean?
Not at all. My initial contrarian thoughts were to go Scherzer and Kershaw and stack against Cole. And not that I don't think Garrett Cole is amazing, but maybe he's a little nervous. First game with the Yankees at Washington, coming off their World Series championship. Could be a motivated crowd, harsh territory and stuff like that. And most specifically, look towards some of the speed players, because that's the one kind of like flaw to Cole's game is he gives up a lot of stolen bases. Just sometimes the numbers aren't as big because nobody's ever on base.
So I get it. I mean, that is definitely something I thought about. It's not my favorite contrarian strategy, but all these I think are like, not necessarily trying to find a needle in a haystack, but stacking against Garrett Cole does not work out that often, as you would definitely attest to. I mean, I guess that I thought about maybe using some San Fran bats, because I don't know how good Kershaw is. I don't think he's as good as Scherzer or Cole right now. San Fran does not have a good offense, but like we just talked about it. I mean, especially on a 2-game slate, we don't know any of these guys right now. It's one baseball game. I mean, I think that's also a viable contrarian strategy.
Absolutely. The problem is, though, like you said, though, they're terrible. I mean, the San Francisco offense, off the top of my mind, I can't even think of who their best player is. I mean, Buster Posey was the guy with the most name recognition. He's not even a thing right now. Unless they get Barry Bonds and Matt Williams and Will Clark back, they just have no names and no talent right there. That all being said, I might have a San Francisco scrub or 2 in my optimal lineup just to help afford better pitching.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously everyone wants the Dodgers here because they're in the best matchup, but
of course,
I think
this is a great Bellman point, right? Like, you're not winning a GPP by stacking Dodgers because that's what everybody wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, without getting a little different somewhere, I mean, that's just the truth of it. It's an interesting slate. I don't really have interest in stacking against Cole. I mean, I get it, though, because I certainly don't want to use Yankees bats against Scherzer. Although it's in the same vein as using Nationals bats, in my opinion.
Right, because Scherzer is probably just as good, if not a better real-life pitcher than Garrett Cole. But Cole's strikeout numbers are just absolute insanity, which is why he's such a great DFS pitcher.
Okay, I get that point. So you'd rather use Nationals bats, and I understand that point.
Right. To me, this is more of something that you like to include in it, and that is the human element of your first game as a New York Yankee. You are in hostile enemy territory to the team that just won the World Series. We don't know how long your leash is going to be. Say you walk a couple of guys. Like I'm thinking of like a Trey Turner, who could easily steal 3-4 bases off of Garrett Cole if he was able to get on base, but how most people probably aren't trying to line up to get Trey Turner is the $5,100 guy against Garrett Cole.
I definitely like Trey Turner, even if you're not stacking Nats. I definitely, you talked about how the Dodgers aren't going to take down a tournament. Well, the straight Dodger stack of their best hitters probably won't do it. But let's say you got weird with it and used like the bottom of their lineup and threw in Trey Turner. I could see something like that taking it down.
Okay, and just because it's been a while since we've talked baseball, I'd like to further clarify my point because, I mean, you're right. I'm not saying a Dodgers stack won't win tournaments. The problem is when you stack Dodgers, that's ultimately the issue with baseball, right? Everybody wants the Dodgers because they are so clearly, not only are they probably the best offense, I mean, you can make, some arguments with the Yankees on the board, but they clearly get the weakest pitcher and they're at home.
Yeah, they're obviously the offense that's in the best spot on paper. I mean, I think the Dodgers have the best offense on paper in baseball. You're right. You could argue the Yankees, et cetera, and no one would think you're crazy. I personally have the Dodgers up top now with Mookie Betts. And we talked about it. Cueto has a good history, but he hasn't been good recently. I mean, he hasn't pitched a ton recently. And these other guys are legit Hall of Famers.
Wow. Just for reference about how long it's been since Johnny Cueto was a good pitcher. And no, he never won the Cy Young. He got second in 2014, which is what the year I was thinking of. But I mean, this guy hasn't tossed more than 150 innings with the exception of one season, and that was 2016. He's just been perpetually hurt for so long now.
Yeah, man. So that means you got the Dodgers bullpen coming in. So, it's a great spot for the Dodgers. Giants bullpen coming in, I bet.
Yeah, and the Giants might be third worst team in baseball.
They're up there, or they're down there.
Yeah, whatever way you want to look at it, right? If you're talking rankings or where they actually finish, they're just not good. They don't have good players.
No, they don't.
I feel like it's been a while since we've talked baseball, but if you ask me to sit down and try to project opening day starting lineups for a few of these teams, off the top of my head, I feel like you could pretty much put some good thoughts into the Dodgers, Nationals, and Yankees. I'd have to really look it up to figure out what I thought San Francisco's opening day lineup would be.
I agree with that. I'm with you 100% there.
Okay, so this is another point where let's talk strategy for just a couple of minutes because I feel like a lot of us have been out of the game for a while now. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening are probably in the same boat just a little bit. Baseball is the one game to me where I hate playing tournaments and cash games together. And what I mean by that is because the two styles are so contrarian to one another. And I feel like if you put heavy money into a cash lineup and then play tournaments, it's rare that your day is going to work out very profitable. I feel like you either play one or play the other, unless you just love your cash game lineup and maybe it's a little bit different and you want to put your tournament lineups in cash.
For sure. I agree with you 100% all the way around.
Right? We see cash lineups take down NBA and NFL tournaments all the time. It just doesn't work that way in baseball very often because when you stack the popular team, you're doing the same exact thing as 40% of the field or whatever it might be.
Agreed.
Okay. So as of right now, 11:40 Central, July 20th, Monday, Mr. Bellman, if you were trying to make an optimal cash lineup, would you be trying to pay up to the top two pitchers and punting offense? Would you be trying to pay down to Kershaw or one of these guys? What do you think you would do?
I think you definitely got to take a look at Kershaw, especially in cash at that price, knowing you need Dodgers bats in cash games. So I honestly think you probably skip Cole. I mean, I don't know. Scherzer and Cole are a toss-up for me, but Scherzer's a lot cheaper.
He is. It's tough to skip Garrett Cole, though, because people are going to pay up for him. And if he pitches well, man, nobody throws up points by him. So he's more expensive, but could you not punt two offense? It depends who comes out, too, right? I don't know who's all going to be in day one. Do you want to play a couple of crappy? This is going to be a tough lineup to construct until we see opening day lineups.
Okay, so you made the point, it's definitely a scary fade in cash games. There's no doubt about that. But there's a bunch of high-priced guys on this slate that are going to be popular. The Dodgers bats and these pitchers, you're going to have to fade someone or a few people. Cole obviously can burn you if you don't, use him, but so could Bellinger/Betts, who you're not going to be able to afford if you use Cole.
Yeah, I feel like, and I could be wrong on this, because I've seen it work both ways. You know what I mean? At the beginning of the season like this, it's a random time. Sometimes you notice all the bats are just off. Sometimes all the pitching is off. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you remember this better than I do. But usually it's the bats come out swinging, right?
I thought it was the other way around.
Was it the other way around? Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
Usually pitching like dominates at first.
Man, I can't. There's no point in my life where I've ever been on a 4-month hiatus from sports like this. It's amazing how your memory just fades.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I'm over here like, knee deep in esports, and I'm thirsting for real sports to come back, and I'm 100% with you.
And I'm with you, though. Even though the Yankees are obviously an elite offense, Max Scherzer at 8,600 is just a tough fade.
I mean, at home,
all the crowd noise you could possibly imagine coming off, like celebrating that World Series, baby.
Yeah, Yankees got some guys that can strike out.
Sure.
I actually do think that, though, like the Yankee bats are going to be lower owned because of this.
Sure, and Scherzer will give up power to lefties, so a couple of Yankees lefties may not be a bad play, although they are right-handed heavy.
So that's the other, like, I guess, contrarian strategy that I guess I'll touch on right now. So there's good pitching on this slate. Cueto doesn't fit into that category right now, but it wouldn't be crazy to see him, pitch a good game. I could see all of these pitchers pitching well here, and none of the offenses like going off at all. And I don't think using like one-offs. You talked about Trey Turner, like using guys like that is a crazy strategy at all for this 2-game slate.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's kind of our once through on pitching. I think we agree that the top overall pitcher on the slate, price per dollar, is going to be Max Scherzer, as far as from a pre-strategies kind of standpoint, not from obviously results, which we don't know. And then you have to make the decision. Do you want to go with Garrett Cole, who at this point is just better than Clayton Kershaw, especially from a DFS perspective? Yeah. Resume, Kershaw still has it, obviously.
For me, I'll go with Cole personally because I think I can always find cheap bats. I'm definitely more apt to use a couple Giants bats against Kershaw, who we haven't talked on this because it doesn't really apply, too much because they haven't played yet, but definitely a park upgrade for San Francisco, who plays in the worst hitters park in the world.
Yeah, although it's not like Dodger Stadium at night is exactly it's not like playing in Cincy.
For sure, no doubt about it.
Okay. I would love to get up to Scherzer and Cole because at this point of his career, Clayton Kershaw is just not in the same category from a DFS perspective. He's still good, but he's not what he was 5 years ago when he was clearly the best pitcher in baseball.
He's not even the same breath in a real life perspective either. I mean, he's definitely maybe the best pitcher of the past. He's right up there as the best pitcher of the past 10 years or whatever, but he's fallen off the past couple of years. And
he was the best pitcher of last decade, and we just started a new one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to be surprised if the Giants get to him a little bit because, like you said, you said they're horrible, and I agree, but that doesn't mean they can't have a good game. They will have good games throughout the year. That's the beauty of baseball.
Sure. I mean, who's playing free and loose? If you're a San Francisco Giant,
right?
I mean, this is not football. You don't get cut. You still get paid. You have nothing to lose this season. Your team is terrible, but you're just up there trying to, make some future money and stay in the bigs.
Exactly. So, cool.
All right, let's just kind of shimmy through the catcher position. So the one thing that we don't have is we're not going to get a backup catcher on day one that you're going to be able to punt for, 2,200 or something like that.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, I agree with that. I think catcher is kind of just your favorite offense. That's who you go with. Unless you want to just punt with whoever's catching for the Giants, who I have no idea.
I mean, that's not a bad strategy.
I mean, it seems like the starting catchers are all over 4K. The Giants guy's probably 3,500. So, you're going to have to punt somewhere if you want the big Dodgers bats, and there's no catcher you need on this slate.
No. Gary Sanchez is clearly the best DFS catcher up there.
For sure.
But he's going against Max Scherzer. I mean,
I'd rather use Will Smith, but he's expensive and then part of a Dodger stack if you're using them heavy. I think that he'll probably be owned because all the Dodgers are going to be owned.
I'm just looking up this San Francisco starting lineup. I forgot that they got Billy Hamilton. That's Mike Yastrzemski, not Carl Yastrzemski, so not nearly as good. This is just a bad team. Tyler Heineman appears to be their opening day catcher, and he's 3,400, like you said, about 3,500. So it's a discount, and you're going to have to pick him out somewhere, especially if you choose to go with Scherzer and Cole. This is probably not the worst place to get it because I don't love the other catchers. Would you rather have him or Kurt Suzuki for 4,100? Give me Heineman.
Yeah, and people all the Giants guys are just going to be so low owned because of just no one's going to want to play them.
Right. Okay, so let's take a look at the first base position.
Okay. I got a guy. Before you even go, I got a guy I like it first. You talk about lefty power against Garrett Cole. How about Eric Thames?
Well, I mentioned lefty power against Scherzer, actually.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Excuse me. Sorry. But lefties can definitely get to Cole also.
Sure. And, you were always big on talking lefties against Max Scherzer. And if you look up the numbers, they're not wrong. Lefties will occasionally take him yard. You're never going to rock Scherzer. Like, that just doesn't happen. But he will give up home runs to lefties.
Amen.
So I don't really love anybody at first base. I mean, off the top of my mind, obviously, like Max Muncy is going to be, the guy if you can get up there. But especially if you're spending up at pitching, even if you take Garrett Cole out of the equation and go with a Kershaw and a Max Scherzer, like you're still looking at Eric Thames or Max Muncy as guys that are a negative detriment to your salary.
That's with Heineman in there.
Yes.
The problem is there just isn't that many options because, like you said, you're going to have to play someone up top there.
Right? Like, I would love it if Kendrys Morales was in the starting lineup against Scherzer just to play him. But guess what? He ain't going to be. That's not an option.
Team anymore.
Exactly. How has Brandon Belt done against Clayton Kershaw in his career?
Boy. 460.
Yeah, that's not good with 29 strikeouts. Now, again, Kershaw is not the same guy, and BVP is not a perfect stat because none of them are. But, man, that's terrible.
We talk about this a lot. Listen to our first baseball video. We're not like BVP truthers, like it means everything, but it means something, right? Because it obviously means something because these guys are human beings.
I just think most people don't understand how to properly use the BVP statistic. And they'll look at something like Evan Longoria is 6 of 22 off of Clayton Kershaw. You can't take anything off that. That's 273. That's probably right about his career average. He has 2 doubles to be about what you expect. You just have to completely ignore that statistic because it means nothing right there.
Yeah, that 460 definitely means something.
Yeah, and kind of like
an already bad spot on paper for him.
Right, and the flip side of that is when you saw Evan Longoria off of CC Sabathia, whatever those numbers were, like in his career, he was like 38 of 80 with like 7 or 8 home runs. Like, that's overwhelming. He clearly sees the ball off of him.
I will say, though, like Wilmer Flores, he'll probably start somewhere. And that doesn't mean a lot for me, but he's probably cheap and he hits lefties well.
Yeah, and he's 5 of 16, which again, it's not the reason to play him, but it doesn't.
Exactly.
It's not even on here.
You're not playing him because of that belt. There he is.
It's not that cheap, 3,800.
I mean, anyone under 4K, I feel like is cheap that's starting.
Right, and again,
you know what I mean?
We don't know who's all in and out day one. It's a weird time. I feel like the reporting has been terrible, and maybe I've just been lazy and not been looking into it as much. But there might be a random guy or two on one of these teams in a starting lineup that can make lineups easier. And if there is that random cheap guy, expect him to get some love just to help people build lineups because lineup construction is tough.
I'm looking at it like guys under 4K are cheap. Are you with me there?
Sure, but
for this slate,
yes. But it's like then if you're comparing how much, if you're 3,900, you're cheap, but I'd still rather get the guy at 4,300 if it's not that much of a help. If I could find one guy at 3K or 3,100, that would help so much.
I just doubt that's going to, maybe it might happen with the Giants. That's it.
Right. Is this Slater guy, Austin Slater? I don't even know, is he on the team or no news?
Go check their depth chart real quick. You had it up.
He specifically looks to be about 4th in line in the outfield. So you just don't really know 100%, especially with the Giants, who are just not very good.
They also have a DH. Hunter Pence is probably out. I don't know what's up with Belt and Longoria. Who the hell knows? So definitely something to keep your eye on because these guys are going to be the cheapest hitters out there.
Also, this video here is more for Matt and I to get on here and start talking about it, and for a lot of you guys just to try to kind of get the juices flowing. We'll come back out on Thursday and we talk about this one after. Hopefully we can get some starting lineups early in the day Thursday.
For sure. So,
And we might. They oftentimes do that on opening day.
I hope so. First base is rough. You got to pay up. I think we have to kind of wait for lineups there, but I'm not sure that there's going to be a guy that's really cheap there.
No, and that's where I'm not. That's like the difference between paying down. Like, yes, is Luke Voit cheaper than Max Muncy? Absolutely, but how much is that $400 right there? Like, to me, that's a big difference in how much I want to play those guys.
I get that.
So we'll watch that one out. Hopefully we can get some news and we can do a more precise video come Thursday. But honestly, woke up this morning. It's Monday. Been eating like crap the last 3 weeks. Haven't worked out as much. Felt very motivated to just kind of get back into real life and just wanted to sit around and talk some baseball with you.
Amen. I'm about that. I'm all aboard. I think at second base, you got to take a long look at Gavin Lux, huh?
Yeah, I was literally going to say that. So I'm 100% on board with you right there.
I mean, that's the chalky second baseman, and he makes a lot of sense. He's
now, you brought up Wilmer Flores, though, and I think that's a great point right there. At $200 cheaper and a fraction of the ownership, Wilmer Flores could be the 3-hole hitter for all we know.
Right? And like a solo home run or a double might outscore Lux because that's baseball.
Right. Like, this isn't a one-to-one type of scenario, right? Exactly. Like, if you asked me to bet my dog's life on Flores or Lux, who's getting more points, with no odds, of course I'm going with Gavin Lux. But for just today, in one day alone in the sport of baseball, at what could, depending on where these guys are batting, which could be a major difference in ownership, I mean, there might be a good spot to save $200, especially in GPPs.
Definitely.
And how about this Dubon guy that is projected to be like the starting second baseman per ESPN? If that's the case, $3,100, like, look, I'm not excited about the prospects of playing him against Clayton Kershaw, but that $3,100 guy, that could be a great punt for the day.
Definitely. I saw he's got really nice BVP off Kershaw, too.
What is it, like 1 for 1?
It's 2 for 2, I think.
2 for 2. He owns them. Well, it's a double and a home run. That only means something to me from the perspective he probably comes in today feeling good about himself.
That's all I was going to say. I mean, that's half the battle, right? Like, it doesn't mean Kershaw is not like, damn, this guy's 2 at 2 off me and schools him and strikes him out every time he faces him. But Dubon's definitely going to be feeling good.
I mean, as good as you can feel. I mean, just go back to Little League guys. Like, if there was a guy that you'd face 5 times, you had 4 hits off of him, you felt a little bit more comfortable walking out there. Not, it didn't make the at-bat, but it felt a little better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is one guy to definitely keep your eyes on. Hopefully we get lineups before this starts, because I think that's going to be, all things being projected. If he's in the starting lineup, that's a great punt. Because punting, again, you mentioned the $4K salary difference. Punting at $3,100 helps a lot more, especially on a slate like this.
That's a true punt. I mean, like, Flores is cheap because, he's under 4K, but he's not a punt.
Yeah. Yeah, the Giants are terrible, but it's the only place to really go for anybody that's, decently cheap.
Mm-hmm. Especially because outfield, you want expensive guys, too.
Yeah,
all
look at over there, too.
I feel like are in the outfield.
All right. So I do think, just glancing at the third base position, that Justin Turner's a good play. The 4,100, you get a very good hitter and a very good lineup for a very affordable price. You don't have to spend way up to like Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger territory. And are Betts and Bellinger better DFS players than Turner? Of course they are. But they're also $1,000 more for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely the cash game third baseman and definitely the best guy on paper here. No doubt about it.
Yeah, dollar for dollar, probably your best option because, yes, I like DJ LeMahieu.
I mean,
but Max Scherzer's, real good.
Turner might be the most popular hitter on the slate. I can see that.
I have no arguments with you.
And he probably should be.
He just looks slightly too cheap. Again, he doesn't steal bases, right? He doesn't hit for major power. But, I mean, he did have 29 home runs last year, so maybe he hit for a little more power than I remembered last season. But he's a good hitter in a very good lineup.
He's good against righties. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to get different elsewhere. Like, even if he's a guy that it's hard to get away from him here. Third base sucks.
Right? Like, I don't think when you play Justin Turner, it's not like when you go up against like Yelich and Bellinger and Trout, where there's just so many games where they hit solo home runs, a double, 2 RBIs, and steal a base and put up 30. Turner doesn't have a ton of huge games like that. But dollar for dollar, is there anybody that makes more sense on the slate?
No, I agree with that point. Good call.
So, I mean, there's nobody down low here. What's that?
This position also sucks.
Yeah. Again, I get it. If Longoria were to be starting at 3,200, that's a pretty solid punt for a guy who's good against lefties.
Sure.
But I do think in cash games, like you said, specifically, if you can prioritize Justin Turner, he just makes the most sense.
Definitely.
All right. Kind of taking a look at the shortstop position. God, do you remember like 5 years ago when Corey Seager was all the rage and like this was the guy in the Dodgers lineup they thought would be the difference maker? And now he's just one of like 18,000 good hitters.
I know that you did a fantasy baseball draft last night, and for me, I couldn't believe how far he fell.
Well, how many years now are we away from him being super relevant? Like he was like the up and coming Shipe Browning star, and then injuries has slowed him down, and the offense around him has just gotten stacked in the meantime.
Yeah, that torn ACL seems like it really took its toll on him.
All right, so I mean, we go back. Standard batting. I mean, this is a guy that was the rookie of the year in just 2016. Had a solid follow-up season, and then he missed all 2018. And last year, like, he was all right, but he didn't look as good as he once did. And in that lineup with so many great hitters around him, it just didn't look like this. I will say, a good buying sign for Seager this year, besides the fact he's still in the prime of his career, those 44 doubles last year, another year removed from injury, you could definitely see that power coming back a little bit.
Yeah, I could easily see him having a big bounce back here. He's good, in my opinion.
I was going to say 30 home runs, but yeah, that's not happening in 60 games.
No, it's not. Good call.
And if it does, that's amazing.
I love the Trey Turner call here, though.
And just to reiterate the call on Trey Turner, guys, this is 100% a GPP play, right? Like, you do not prioritize Trey Turner's salary against an elite pitcher like Garrett Cole in cash games. That's just silliness right there at its finest. But in GPPs, what do you think Turner ownership is? Like under 5%?
Ask you that. What'd you say?
I'd say well under 5%.
Oh, no, not on a 2-game slate. I don't think people are on and in those big tournaments. I think he'll be like 10% owned. I was gonna make the point that like I love him, but don't think you're gonna get him. I literally was gonna say, but don't think you're getting him at under 5%.
I don't think anybody wants to play against Cole. I also don't think that there's going to be a couple people who like to get silly with it like you do and love going that contrarian angle. But you can afford maybe one 5K guy. It is really hard for people to take Trey Turner over Cody Bellinger on the slate.
It is.
Or bets.
It is. I agree. And that's why I think we'll be around 10% owned. I could be off there. We shall see soon enough.
We will definitely see. So I love the angle on this one. And again, that is to reiterate, one of the only flaws to Garrett Cole's game is he is not good at controlling runners. He's improved a little bit throughout his career, but it's a weakness to what he does. The flip side of that is it's not that big of a deal because nobody ever gets on base.
This is true.
Yeah. You can have a flaw like that, and if there's nobody on, they can't steal.
Good point.
All right. In cash games, though, when we're looking at the shortstop position, I think I'm going to re-mention that Dubon character from the San Francisco Giants is probably a guy that you should look at very closely to make the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Seager, like Dodgers, are all viable, especially in cash games.
Right. Every Dodger is in play. And also, as we mentioned in the beginning, everybody wants to play the Dodgers. This is as clear and obvious a position as you may find in baseball all season.
I actually think that in cash games, you just lock in Muncy, Lux, Turner, and Seager, and one of the outfielders, because you can't afford both outfielders anyway. So it's not like you want to skip one of those guys so you can get Bellinger and Betts, because you can't afford Bellinger and Betts no matter what.
And that's where getting Dubon at the second base position and playing Muncy at first, if this works out that way, is going to be a big benefit to you.
For sure.
So hopefully, I think if we could all cross our fingers and really hope for this one, that they do us a solid and drop these lineups early, it's going to make things significantly easier as far as roster construction goes.
Going back to like the beginning of the video, and I mentioned the Dodgers stack with Cueto. The reason I could see that is because the only way to like stack the Dodgers fully, like Bellinger and Betts and their best hitters, is to use Cueto.
All right. I'm going to give Matt some on-air praise for something that you talk about a lot, but I always struggled years ago to have as be part of my arsenal, and that is to hope that they get to the bullpen. And it works out better in smaller slates because you're not beating as many people. Like Cueto could go 4 innings pitched, 1 earned run, gives up a solo home run to Muncy or something like that, strikes out 5 guys, and then the Giants' less than stellar bullpen comes in, and then the Dodgers go full Dodgers and score 9 runs off them. Meanwhile, a guy like Kershaw, he skates through 5 innings but only strikes out 2 guys. They don't really tally up his pitch count too high. And maybe he only outscores Cueto by a point.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's definitely not a cash game strategy, and it's not going to work out most of the time. But it's a way to get to the top of the field without having a ton of people, not having to fight with a lot of people.
It's also something you only deploy in the right scenarios, and that's typically going to be a smaller slate, especially like early in the season when we don't know what pitch counts are. Now, if we get word on pitch counts, this whole slate changes a little bit. If all of a sudden it comes out that Garrett Cole's on a 60 pitch count, well, then your desire to pay $10K for him is significantly lower. And if they say Max Scherzer is, good for 100, I mean, Max Scherzer will be 100% owned.
Yeah, exactly. There's still a lot of wait and see on this slate, but like you talked about, we'll make another video. We're still 3 days away.
Yeah. I know y'all are desperate. We're just as desperate to talk sports as you guys are to watch it.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
So I told you I was up at my uncle's cottage this weekend, boating and jet skiing and whatnot. My uncle's also, he likes to party a little bit. He built like his pole barn, which is where you store all your boats. And he's got like 8 boats. So instead of storing them there, he just made another one and he turned it into like this party room with like karaoke. Awesome. You know the song Someone You Loved by Louis Capaldi?
Probably, if I heard it.
Okay.
Sure.
You would know it if you heard it. It was super popular for the last year. It's kind of like a slower ballad song. But I was singing it with him this weekend. And instead of like thinking about like a woman like a normal person would, I was thinking about sports. And I'm like reading through these lyrics about how much I missed you and you left me and stuff like that. I was just thinking about baseball, basketball, and football the whole time.
That's amazing.
I'm like, I didn't know what my life would be like without you. And here we are. We finally get you back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's shimmy on over to the outfield position. You mentioned Bellinger and Betts. You have to play Cueto if you want to stack them. That's where that Matt's bullpen strategy comes into play right here.
Yeah, I mean, outfield definitely has the best hitters on this slate also. Even guys in bad matchups, talk about one-offing guys like the Yankees hitters. They're good, like they're good hitters. Juan Soto, man, he's good. The Dodgers are, of course, the priority on paper, though.
Sure. Stanton has some experience against Scherzer because they were in the same division for a couple of years, and he's taken a couple home runs off of him. I feel like I've heard he's looked pretty good throughout this early portion right here. I don't think a lot of people will prioritize Giancarlo Stanton, who, again, he could homer off Scherzer once and then homer again in the late innings, and maybe the Yankees lose 7-2 with 2 solo shots to Stanton. And, he won't be unowned, but I don't think Stanton will be anywhere close to chalk.
No, I think the Yankees in general will be very low owned because Scherzer's cheap. It's Scherzer. They're very right-handed heavy, so it's not a good matchup on paper. I think the Yankees are very low owned here.
I would think so too. They're affordable, though. I mean, is one thing. Max Scherzer just does not get rocked a lot, though. That's the issue.
They are affordable, but if you go back to the other positions, they're right with the Dodgers. Gleyber, Torres. They're other hitters besides Outfielders.
I was more thinking Judge, Hicks, and Stanton versus Bellinger and Bellinger and Betts. So
I could see Judge at 200 less than Stanton will get definitely love as a one-off. If you have punk guys that make his salary affordable, Stanton will be unowned in my opinion though.
Yeah, again, an unowned is still you talked about with Trey Turner. It's still a number because it's
right.
It's only 2 game slate. As far as cheaper outfielders go, I mean, you might trying to go back to look at some of these San Francisco Giants, like Alex Dickerson, for example, is projected to be an opening day starter. Am I excited about the notion to play Alex Dickerson? Of course not. I'm not a silly person. But he is 3,300.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that it's so hard to build on this slate is all these offenses are good, and they're kind of priced as such. but they're all in bad matchups except for the Dodgers. They stand out like a sore thumb.
Which goes back to the point that you've said a few times, and I don't think you can reiterate enough. And I'm sure most of you guys know this, but in your cash games, you want as much exposure to the Dodgers as you can possibly get. You know, taking a look at the Washington Nationals right now, if somebody doesn't make the lineup for whatever reason, you got a guy like Taylor of the Washington Nationals. So another guy, he's got a little pop. He can definitely steal a base, which you can do off Cole. It's not a good matchup, but it's another potential one-off right there if he somehow makes the lineup.
And that's also what's interesting to me when you mentioned, using some Nationals bats against Cole. And I don't disagree with that strategy. Their lineup, though, to me, is not as good as the Yankees. So I like their spot better, but their lineup just doesn't really do it for me. I like Turner and Soto a lot, but now no Rendon. And obviously no Bryce Harper, who I know that you're not a huge fan of, but if you take their lineup from 2 years ago and say no Rendon or no Bryce Harper, I mean, you're not thinking it's a world-beating lineup anymore.
No, Rendon was the borderline MVP type of play. So he had a great year last year, really helped carry him to the World Series. Trey Turner, obviously Juan Soto's a stud in the making. Bryce Harper's a little bit more name than he actually is production, but he does still strike fear in the opposing pitcher.
Yeah, he makes everyone else's job easier around him.
And when he's locked in, he's good. He doesn't seem to be engaged the way the other stars are. Where you saw Trout have a bad 3 games once, but then he got it back. Like Harper just goes through these months where you're like, dude, are you even trying?
For sure. But from a pure baseball standpoint, he's worlds better than anyone on the Nationals lineup except for Soto and Turner.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I don't see anybody down here that we can even project to be in the starting lineup. I mean, Billy Hamilton made the team. He's 2,600.
I can't see him starting here, man. Maybe because I don't know who's going to be out, but that's such a bad matchup for him, lefty on lefty.
Right, he's a switch hitter.
He is a switch hitter. Good call. Maybe he could make the lineup.
He could. I mean, maybe if you're San Francisco and you're terrible and you don't have any power, like San Francisco, I think it's a good bet. Nobody hits over 25 home runs on that team all year.
Well, if in a full season, yeah. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Whatever that projects out to, say 12 or something. 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's different now, though, because someone could get hot for a couple weeks now. And,
sure.
You know what I'm saying? But I agree with your premise, for sure.
The idea of 25 home runs is I'll probably screw that up 100 more times.
Agreed.
All right. So, again, we'll retouch on this stuff again on Thursday. I think Max Scherzer's the lock at pitcher. And then if you can find a way to finagle Garrett Cole, even though I don't hate the idea of playing some guys against him, the benefit of or the risk of fading Garrett Cole it's big.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, he's a strikeout master.
I mean, that guy can rattle off 10 Ks just so easily that there's a lot of risk, and he'll be owned. I mean, people love to play Garrett Cole because he just gives them big numbers.
And it's also a 2-game slate, and you got to roster 2 pitchers, so he'll definitely be owned.
Right, my first thoughts are it was all 3 of the top pitchers, Scherzer, Kershaw, and Cole. I expect them all to be – well, I expect Scherzer to be more like maybe 75, 80%, and then the other 2 guys to be big numbers, and then Cueto come in well under 10%.
Yeah, agreed.
So, all right, guys, go check out Overlay if you haven't done it already. We will get back to talking about them, and we got NBA's only about 10 days away as well. So we are back and getting our sports here really, really soon. There's going to be a lot to talk about over the next month as we also have football hopefully starting up in just under 2 months.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. I'm pumped. This video got me going.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No doubt about that one at all.
Thanks, guys.